No one expected the New York Mets to do this as they made a ninth inning comeback today after being flat all day in their game against the Kansas City Royals, which changes the vibes for the team overall heading into the All-Star break and makes fans a lot more pleased and a lot happier than if the club simply would have just gone down 1-2-3 to end today's game in the ninth. So, of course, with an important game, we're going to go over it in depth today. And because it is the last game before the 2025 All-Star break, we're going to go over the franchise's surprising history on the day before the All-Star break. So stay tuned as this will only be available here on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. I'll take you through everything. But first, we have to talk about some subscribers, and that being that 67.8% of you that watch these videos aren't a subscriber. You aren't one. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here on Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this. And we're going to do an in-depth dive, and we're going to go over the key moments in the key innings, kind of like a sports night or a sports center would. Starting off bright and early in the first inning, Francisco Lindor back in the leadoff spot after being in the 2-hole for about 2 weeks. He ends up striking out, but Mark Vientos, being red hot in the 2-hole, ends up hitting one that I thought was going to go out of the ballpark, but it stays in, and Vientos able to leg out a triple. The first of 2 triples today for the New York Mets. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, runner on third with 1 away, and Juan Soto, the guy you want up in this situation at the plate, but unfortunately he grounds out to short, and the Mets could not capitalize in the inning. They go down with no runs, starting out their game-long problems, and honestly season-long problems of runners left on base and not hitting with runners in scoring position. We'll jump to the bottom of the second, where the majority of the scoring comes for the Kansas City Royals. It starts out with their all-star Maikel Garcia, who doubles. Salvador Perez is then hit by a pitch, and Jack Caglione grounds out to second, but it advances both runners in Perez and Garcia. Then it's John Rave, who hits a 2 RBI double. He's later caught stealing, but it doesn't matter as the Royals hit the board with 2. They would end up staying a 2-0 game. The Royals would only have 2 for a long time, as now we take a look at the 7th inning. Tyrone Taylor had a good game today. He started off with a base knock here in the 7th, but Luis Stearns grounded into a double play, the second double play that the Mets grounded into today, and they come up empty. Heading over to the 9th, this is where the Mets finally score some runs. Starts off with Ronnie Mauricio, who leads it off with a double. And then Jeff McNeil pinch hitting for Tyrone Taylor, rips one. And again, I thought this was going out of the ballpark, very similar to Vientos' swing, but it ends up staying in. And McNeil legs out the second triple for the Mets today. It scores Mauricio. It's now a 2-1 ball game. Brett Beatty pinch hitting for Luis Stearns. He's going to ground out to first base, making it man on third with just 1 away. So Jared Young is going to pinch hit for the struggling Luis Angel Acuna, and he hits a sac fly to center, scores Jeff McNeil, and the Mets end up tying the game. We turn it now to the bottom of the 7th. Sean Manaea in his return game, he's still looking really, really good as he is in there with some new faces, including Kodai Senga behind the plate. Of course, the guys that pinch hit now have to go in the field. He starts out strong, that being Manaea, with a strikeout of Salvador Perez, but then it's Tyler Tolbert who gets a base hit in front of Juan Soto into right field. Tolbert would then steal second, and Nick Lofton would hit a base hit in front of Brandon Nimmo, but Tolbert is super fast and he ends up scoring on the play. It's a walk-off for the Royals, and unfortunately for Sean Manaea, in his first game back, despite looking really, really good, he is going to be credited with the loss. As we'll take a look here at the box score, hitting-wise for both the Mets and the Royals, and it's the same issues that are just glaring for New York. 8 runners left on base today, 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position, with this Jeff McNeil triple being the only hit with runners in scoring position for the Mets today. Every single inning you have a leadoff hitter. There was 9 innings in today's game, and 5 leadoff hitters for the New York Mets reached base. Only 1 of them came around to score, that of course being Mauricio in the 9th inning, so not very good there. 9 strikeouts from the team, in addition to 15 outs being recorded via a ground out on the offensive side of things for New York. 24 of their 27 outs were either via the strikeout or the ground out. And for a team that likes to hit home runs and hit some gap shots, that's not what you want. You want line drives, and honestly, you want fly balls, because especially in a stadium like Kauffman Stadium, where it was blowing out today, it was hot and humid, the ball was carrying, you want those home runs, and the Mets just didn't put the ball in the air, so they didn't have the chance to do it. The offense was really, really quiet, but the pitching side looked really solid, as Clay Holmes only gave up 2 earned runs over his 5 innings of work. He continues a really, really solid season, and now has eclipsed the 100 innings pitched mark for the first time in his MLB career, with the previous high only being 70 innings. Keep in mind, he was a reliever for his entire career before heading to the Mets. The long-awaited debut of Sean Manaea starts in the 6th inning, and he was dominant. He pitched the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning, ended up giving up no earned runs on just 3 hits while striking out 6 over those frames. He looked dominant, and the Mets ended up making, of course, this surprising comeback. So, with Edwin Diaz having pitched back-to-back days, including 2 innings yesterday, the Mets ended up having Manaea continue his outing here in the 9th inning, and it didn't work out. He ended up giving 2 hits, as we saw earlier, and the Mets ended up losing the game, as, of course, it was a walk-off for Nick Lofton. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the overall box score, as the New York Mets, surprisingly, they are now 0-37 when trailing entering the 9th inning. That, of course, means if the Mets are losing going into the 9th inning, they have now played 37 games and haven't won a single one. They are not very clutch down the line. I thought today was going to be the first time that they broke that streak. I really did feel it. I thought they would be 1-36 after today, but unfortunately, they just were not. It's only the second time out of those 37 games that the Mets were trailing entering the 9th and ended up tying it up, with the other one being on May 23rd in that 7-5, 13-inning extra inning loss against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, the Mets do have 42 losses on the season, so the question is, where do the other losses come from? That being 2 of them were a tied game, and then the Mets ended up losing in extra innings. That, of course, being on April 16th in Minnesota and June 17th in Atlanta. And 3 times the Mets actually led entering the 9th inning, but were walked off on, and that was twice in the Washington series in April, the 25th and the 27th, and once on June 3rd against the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, the Mets clearly are not clutch in the 9th inning so far this year, and other teams have had success in that category, but that's not what I'm most concerned with, because usually when you're trailing going into the 9th inning, you're going to end up losing the game. What I'm concerned with is the Mets just go into cruise control, they take a break, it almost feels like, the day before the All-Star break, and this has been a franchise-long problem. Take a look at this tweet. Big day for the Mets today. They haven't won the final game before the All-Star break since 2015. It's 2025. I mean, that is insane. And the franchise record here for the day before the All-Star break, not much better. Keep in mind, the New York Mets had 2 All-Star games, or MLB rather, had 2 All-Star games in 1962. There was no All-Star game in 2020, and the New York Mets have played multiple double headers the day before the All-Star break, including that second All-Star break in 1962, 1968, 1969, 1971, and 1977. Combined on the day before the All-Star break, their record, 25-44. That is just a .362 winning percentage. They've been outscored 308 to 232, good for a negative 76 run differential. They are currently on the longest losing streak in terms of consecutive seasons losing the day before the All-Star break, with 9 consecutive years doing so. In their history, they've been shut out 5 times the day before the All-Star break, and the most unfortunate thing that I see right now, besides the Mets honestly just shutting down the day before the All-Star break, is that every single season that they've made the World Series, that being 5 times, they've won at least 1 game in the years that they ended up appearing or winning the World Series. 1969 was a split, so that's why it's not they won every single day before the All-Star break. It was a split in 69, but there was at least 1 win every single time. And here in 2025, there was no win. So a little bit concerning, to be honest. Not something to fear mightily, but not something to take lightly, as the Philadelphia Phillies won today. They beat the Padres 2-1, so the Mets are going to enter the break losing, or rather in second place in the division. They end up coming in off a loss, so just a bad taste in the mouths of the New York Mets. But this was the key. This ninth inning was great. I'm really, really happy that the Mets showed fight. That's why I'm a little bit more positive than I would have been if the Mets just went down, because when I tell you they were flat for 8 innings, they were flat for 8 innings. It was really, really bad. So, of course, as I alluded to, the New York Mets are going to go into the All-Star break half a game behind the Philadelphia Phillies. They are 13 games above 500 heading into the break. So go down there in the comment section. Let me know, do you agree that the Mets have a problem on the day before the All-Star break and that they get lazy and they end up not winning baseball games? Let me know if you agree. Let me know your thoughts on today's game, as of course the Mets head into the All-Star break. First half of the season is behind us. So let's go Mets for the second half. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you in today's video. Thank you so much as always for watching. And let's go Mets.